World War I didn't begin with a bang. It started with a car ride. A young man in a borrowed uniform stepped onto the street in Sarajevo and pulled the trigger. He didn't know. He just sparked a global disaster. The man was Gavrilo Princip. He shot Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, but the bullet didn't just kill a royal. It tore apart an entire world. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia. Russia backed Serbia. Germany backed Austria-Hungary. France supported Russia. Britain joined for Belgium. It wasn't about honor. It was about fear, pride, and old promises no one thought would be used. In just a few weeks, Europe turned into a battlefield. Millions were pulled into war, not knowing why. They were told it would be over by Christmas. They packed sandwiches and letters. They marched in cheering crowds and waving flags. They didn't know they were walking into mud rats. Gas and fire machine guns tore through bodies faster than anyone imagined. Artillery shells cracked open the earth. Trenches swallowed soldiers into a nightmare. The Western Front froze in place. Soldiers dug holes and stayed there for years. The smell of death never left. Rats the size of cats feasted on the fallen rain, turned the ground into black soup, and gas drifted over the mud like death itself. Chlorine gas came first. It burned the lungs and blinded the eyes. Then came phosgene, more deadly, more silent. And then mustard gas. It didn't kill fast. It rotted the body alive. But the war wasn't just in France. It stretched from Africa to the Middle East to the oceans and skies. In Africa, colonial soldiers fought battles they didn't choose. In the Middle East, the Ottomans tried to hold their empire as Arab rebels rose with British support. In the oceans, German U-boats sank ships. Without warning, they wanted to starve Britain into surrender, but one ship changed everything. The Lusitania, a civilian ship with Americans on board. When it sank, the world noticed. In the skies, planes became deadly toys, first used for spying, then for killing. Dogfights began. Pilots flew without parachutes. They had no training, no safety, just courage and luck. At home, families waited for letters. Many never came. Women filled the factories making shells and uniforms. Children worked long hours to help the war machine. Cities went dark. Food ran low, and the world's patience began to crack. In Russia, things exploded. The Tsar fell. A revolution began. A new government tried to fight, but it couldn't hold. The Bolsheviks took over and made peace with Germany. Suddenly, Germany had one front and one mission. They threw everything at France. They launched the Spring Offensive, hoping to win before America arrived. It almost worked, but they moved too fast, too far, and too tired. Then America came fresh and full of energy. 2 million soldiers landed with tanks, guns, and confidence. Germany couldn't hold. The Allies pushed back inch by inch, town by town, trench by trench. In the end, the German army didn't lose on the battlefield. It collapsed from within. The people rose. The Kaiser fled, and the war stopped on November 11th, 1918 at 11 a.m., but the peace was no peace. The Treaty of Versailles didn't heal. It punished Germany, stripped its colonies, blamed it for the war. It planted the seeds for an even worse war to come. Over 16 million people died. In World War I, entire cities vanished, generations were lost, and the world was never the same again. And all of it started because a man got into the wrong car on a summer day in 1914. World War I didn't just kill soldiers. It destroyed empires. 4 of them vanished forever. The Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed into pieces. Its royal family lost its throne. Its cities fell into chaos. Its people scattered into new nations that had never existed before. The Ottoman Empire fell too after centuries of rule. Its lands were taken. Its army shattered. Its people divided. The British and French carved up the Middle East like a pie. They drew borders in deserts and mountains and called them countries. The German Empire crumbled. The Kaiser fled into exile. The once proud military broken, its people starving, its economy crushed. It became a republic overnight, a republic born from surrender and humiliation. Even the Russian Empire didn't survive. The Tsar and his entire family were executed in a basement by revolutionaries. Their blood soaked the walls. Their dynasty ended with bullets and fire. But the war didn't end. The violence in Ireland, the Easter Rising, turned into a full fight for independence. In Germany, communists clashed with the army. In Hungary, a short-lived Soviet republic rose and fell within months. And in the Middle East, a promise turned into betrayal. Britain told Arab rebels they'd have their own land, but behind their back, they made a deal with France. They planned to take everything for themselves. That betrayal still burns today. Back on the battlefield, the weapons kept evolving. Flamethrowers were introduced. They sprayed fire into bunkers and trenches. Burning men alive in seconds, tanks rumbled onto the scene, slow, clunky, unstoppable. They crushed barbed wire, and fear together snipers became silent killers. They waited for hours just to take one shot. A single breath could give them away. A single blink could save a life or end it. The soldiers tried to stay human. They wrote poetry in the mud, sang songs in bomb craters, shared food with enemies on Christmas Day. Just for a moment, the guns went silent, and the war felt human again. But that moment didn't last. Generals sent men to their deaths by the thousands for a few meters of land. Sometimes the land was taken and lost again in a single day. Lives traded for mud, promotions earned with blood. The Battle of the Somme was one of the worst. It began with a week of non-stop shelling. 1 million shells dropped in 7 days. Then the men went over the top and walked into machine guns. By nightfall, 60,000 were gone. In the east, the war looked different. Wide open plains, cavalry charges, frozen forests, endless retreat, and attack. Russia had the numbers, but not the weapons. Germany had the training, but not the men. It was a brutal equation that no one could solve. Italy joined the Allies, hoping to gain land. They attacked Austria in the mountains. Men froze to death on cliffs. They died in avalanches and artillery strikes fighting for ridges no one remembered. And then came the Spanish flu. While the war was still raging, a virus began to spread. It didn't care about uniforms. It didn't care about sides. It killed fast, and everywhere it infected a third of the planet, killed more people than the war itself. Yet somehow people still hoped, still believed this would be the war to end all wars. They were wrong. The peace was full of anger. Germany was humiliated. Italy was disappointed. Japan was ignored. Russia was isolated. The seeds of revenge had already been planted. In the end, the map changed, but not the minds. The guns fell silent, but the anger didn't. The world didn't heal, it just paused. The Treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919. It was supposed to end everything. It didn't. Germany was blamed for the whole war, forced to pay billions, lost its colonies, and pride. Its army was reduced to almost nothing. The German people were furious. They didn't feel defeated. They felt betrayed by their leaders and humiliated by the Allies. The treaty was not peace, it was punishment. It left Germany wounded and angry. France got some revenge. They took land and security. Britain tried to balance power again, but neither country trusted Germany anymore. Italy was promised land in exchange for joining the war, but it didn't get what it expected. It felt cheated and disrespected. That anger would grow into something darker. Japan fought on the side of the Allies. They took German colonies in Asia, then asked for equality in the treaty. The request was denied flatly. Japan felt insulted. That decision changed history. In Russia, the revolution wasn't over. The Bolsheviks were still fighting a civil war. Red versus white. Cities burned, villages destroyed, entire regions starved. The empire was gone, but peace didn't come. The chaos just changed color. America came out stronger. Its factories kept working, its cities untouched, its economy boomed. But it refused to join the League of Nations, the very group meant to prevent another war. That decision left a hole in world peace. The League had no army, no teeth, no real power. When conflict started again later, it could only watch. The world was trying to move on, but the scars were deep and fresh. In the 1920s, the war was over on paper, but inside people's minds it never ended. Millions of soldiers returned home, some with no legs, some with no eyes, all with broken souls. They had seen death too closely, heard it, smelled it, lived with it. They couldn't explain what happened. Words didn't work, pictures didn't help, only the silence understood them. It was called shell shock back then. Now we call it PTSD. The war came home with them. Countries built memorials, statues, cemeteries, rows and rows of names on cold stones. But no monument could bring back the lost youth. No poem could fix the minds of the broken. Gas masks became symbols of fear. Children in school learned to wear them in drills. The war taught the world one thing: modern weapons make every battlefield a slaughterhouse. But the generals kept planning for the next war. They thought the last one was a fluke, a mistake they could avoid next time. They didn't know it was just the beginning. New leaders were rising, new ideas spreading. Communism in Russia, fascism in Italy, democracy was on shaky legs. Nationalism came back louder and stronger. People wanted jobs, food, safety. Many blamed outsiders, immigrants, minorities, enemies from within. The war had ended, but hate was still alive and growing. And in the middle of all this, a young soldier sat in silence. He had been wounded in the trenches. His pride shattered, his dream broken. His name was Adolf Hitler, and he would change the world again. Germany was collapsing from the inside. Money became worthless, prices doubled daily, people carried cash in baskets, the economy was dead, the anger was alive, the perfect mix for extremism. Hitler joined a small party with big ideas. It became the Nazi Party. He promised to restore pride, punish traitors, and take revenge. He used fear as fuel, blamed Jews, communists, and the treaty in Italy. Mussolini did the same. He marched on Rome, took control by force, promised to bring back Rome's glory. Fascism was born with violence. It spread like fire across Europe. People wanted order at any cost. Meanwhile, Britain and France were tired. They didn't want another war, so they let things slide, closed their eyes. When dictators broke rules, they believed peace was still possible, but the ground was shaking again. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria. The League of Nations did nothing. In 1935, Italy invaded Ethiopia. Again, silence. Aggressors saw weakness, not wisdom, not peace, just fear. Appeasement became policy, delay became strategy. Germany rearmed in secret, then in public. It marched into the Rhineland. No one stopped them. Hitler tested the world. The world failed the test. His next move was Austria, then Czechoslovakia. Each time, bigger, bolder, louder. Chamberlain went to meet him, smiled, shook hands, promised peace. But Hitler never wanted peace. He wanted revenge. The world didn't believe him until it was too late. While politicians talked, Hitler built tanks, trained pilots, made alliances. He signed a deal with Stalin, divided Poland in secret. The world was walking into a trap, eyes open, feet heavy, heart silent. September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Blitzkrieg was unleashed. Fast tanks, dive bombers, chaos in motion. Poland collapsed. In weeks, Britain and France declared war. World War II had begun, but World War I had never really ended. It was the fuse, the trigger, the unfinished chapter. Millions had died to end all wars, but their blood had only marked the start. The war left a broken world, cities in ruins, families without fathers, countries filled with scars. But not all scars were visible. Some were buried in minds, others in silence. Millions had shell shock, nightmares, screams. They never forgot. A generation was lost, not just in death, but in spirit. The poets wrote of pain, the artists painted fear, the music mourned. Everyone was changed forever. Peace didn't bring joy, it brought confusion. The Middle East was carved by strangers, new borders, new names, old problems. France and Britain drew lines, promised land to everyone, betrayed them all. Anger grew, decades passed, but the wounds stayed open. The Ottoman Empire was gone. Austria-Hungary disappeared. Russia turned red. Germany was punished, humiliated, exhausted. That gave birth to rage. World War I didn't stop war, it just pressed pause. The League of Nations was weak, no army, no power, just hope. America refused to join. They turned inward, let Europe burn again. The dream of lasting peace died before it lived. World War I was the war to end all wars, but it became the reason for the next. It didn't teach the world to avoid blood, it taught how to spill it faster. New weapons, new tactics, new hatred. Gas killed silently, tanks crushed trenches, bombers targeted cities. This wasn't the end, this was the rehearsal. The world would fight again, but next time it would be bigger. World War II began where World War I ended. Same countries, same issues, new monsters. The total death toll of WW1 was 20 million. The damage? Unmeasurable. The lesson? Still not learned. So when you hear about the Great War, remember this: it didn't just change history, it rewrote the future, and we are still living in its shadow. And if you reach this far, you're not just watching history, you re part of it now. You've seen what most on TV felt, what textbooks can't say. So, if this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more forgotten truths, real facts, not fairy tales, and turn on the bell, because history never sleeps, and neither do we.